Welcome viewers to Labor's widow tax. I'm Dr. J.W. Ayub. The widow tax is not literally a tax imposed because someone becomes a widow, but that defence misses the common sense problem. Labor designed tax reforms that were supposed to protect existing investment, arranged through grandfathering, yet something as predictable as a spouse dying, a marriage ending, or ownership passing between partners could potentially disrupt that protection and leave the remaining owner financially worse off. The common sense questions are simple. People die, people divorce, property is inherited. How were these circumstances not adequately dealt with before the reforms progressed? I'll tell you why. They didn't want them to be. Labor's move to correct the problem only strengthens the argument that there was a problem requiring correction. Calling it a widow's tax is political language, but concentrating entirely on whether the nickname is technically accurate risks avoiding the bigger issue. Government writes the rules, government should anticipate obvious consequences, and Australians dealing with bereavement or family breakdown should not discover legislative problems before the government does. And that's what's happening. It's happening with the women's sex discrimination laws as well. The bottom line, it doesn't require believing Labor deliberately wanted to tax widows. It requires asking a much simpler question. If death and inheritance are inevitable, why wasn't the problem anticipated before the law affected Australians? Labor's widow tax, when the death of your partner could cost you thousands.
Say, as we commence the second half of this year, what an absolute disgrace this government has been exposed. What kind of a Prime Minister legislates a widow's tax? Well, sadly for the Australian people, that would be Mr Anthony Albanese. This is a tax that can hit when your spouse dies. This is a tax that can hit when a marriage breaks down. But worse, a tax that can hit victims of domestic violence trying to rebuild their lives. And that is why the Senate should suspend its standing orders. We need to hold this government to account.
Thank you very much, Deputy President. Well, I stand today to support the suspension by Senator Cash that is preventing her, or would enable her, to actually speak about something that is urgent. It's very urgent. Ask Australians about what's urgent. What is urgent is the fact that they can't afford to pay their bills. They've seen the value in their houses absolutely fall through the floor. And we know that there are many people out there concerned about the impact of this so-called widow's tax, because at a time in someone's life when they are at their most vulnerable, at a time in someone's life when they have got so much to deal with, this government knowingly allowed a piece of legislation through this place. They forced a piece of legislation through this place that actually contained elements in there that actually were making victims of victims. I mean, I don't know how the Labor Party could not have had the decency to fix the problem before they shoved that piece of legislation through here. I mean, the question the Australian people should be asking of this government, what sort of government, what sort of Prime Minister, what sort of Treasurer would knowingly put a piece of legislation through this chamber that says to somebody when they've lost their partner to death that they're a widow or a widower, when somebody who's gone through the trauma of a marriage breakup, often having to separate children, pets, assets and the like, what sort of government would say to a woman, most likely, or anyone for that matter, escaping a domestic violence situation when they're fearful for their lives, oh, we're going to financially penalise you for that?
Thank you, Acting Deputy President. If you really want to get up the Labor Party's nose, you only need to use one word, and that is mean. If you call the Labor Party mean, they will squeal. They squeal every time, but that's exactly what the widow's tax is. It is mean. It's a mean tax. It's a tricky tax. And don't for a second be fooled into thinking that it wasn't entirely deliberate. The widow's tax imposed by Labor was no accident. There was plenty of chances for the Labor Party to fix this, to fix it 6 weeks ago when the Senate was sitting, when the original taxation legislation was being passed. But they chose not to. It wasn't an oversight, it was a deliberate act, and it was a mean act, a tricky act. And more importantly, it was a failure of basic moral reasoning. But the Labor Party persisted. It's a tax that catches people at their most vulnerable. Labor's tax increases, don't for a second let them fool you into believing that these tax increases are reform. They're not reform. They are tax increases. Labor's tax increases were supposed to grandfather existing investment properties, protecting them from changes to negative gearing and capital gains tax if they were bought before budget night. However, what this tax does is ensure that if one owner dies or a couple divorces, well then the property is transferred to the other owner, and Labor treats that as a change in ownership, and that grandfathering, that protection disappears. That's what this tax does. It was intentional. It wasn't an oversight. They had a choice, and they chose to inflict it upon the most vulnerable. The extraordinary thing is Labor clearly know that this is a problem. They know it's a problem because now they're saying that they're going to deal with it. They're going to deal with it by attaching it to another bill and then consulting on it. And yet every single other senator in this chamber is willing to change this, is willing to change it now. They realise it's a problem. Labor has chosen to pass the bill with the widow's tax still in it. Senator Cox was incorrect. There is a widow's tax. It's no one's imagination. It is there. And it is a divorcee tax. And it is a tax on survivors of domestic violence. And it's been deliberately chosen by the Labor government. You had 6 weeks. Labor had 6 weeks to produce a bill to remove this tax, 6 weeks, and they've chosen not to. Instead, they've chosen to delay. They've put out an exposure draft, sent it out for consultation, bundled it with legislation that deals with trusts and other tax changes that they know that the coalition won't support. And they've done this because they're doubling down on mean, they're doubling down on tricky. And in the meantime, they're playing politics with people's lives, with women's lives. It's disgusting.
So viewers, the real issue is competence, not terminology. The competence of this government. Death, inheritance and divorce are predictable realities, not obscure loopholes. And if government expects Australia to understand complex laws and bear the consequences of their mistakes, Australians can reasonably expect government to exercise the same care in writing them, but they're not. It's a cash grab. Good government doesn't fix foreseeable problems. It prevents them. And I believe Australian citizens should call for a redress. I think we should all be compensated for the money that they've stolen, that we've worked hard to earn. That's my opinion. Why can't we be compensated for the abuse of the political architecture? That's my opinion.